Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Goddess Suite. Holistic Gals here. Who else is on the line?
Sister Love is in the house tonight.
And Mr. Feather. How's everybody out there tonight?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Good. A good day.
Yes, considering I haven't been able to watch the news, but I just been hearing so much about, those riots in Baltimore. And the latest thing I heard was that they let the zoo animals out. I don't know if you all heard about that, but
no, that's not true. That's not true.
Yeah, I'm like, God, lions and tigers and bears. Oh my!
What? And who let the animals out?
That's not true. That's not true. I was watching the news this evening. They instituted a curfew for 10:00, and they had the National Guard out there. So actually, they had groups of people stopping the riots today.
Oh, well, good.
Yeah. So it was today wasn't a bad day. There's a pretty big conscious community in Baltimore. So when I heard about it, I was like shocked, like what's going on? So, but they showed on the news this guy from a gang who was stopping people from rioting. And, of course, pastors. And they had teachers because they closed school today. Teachers was out there talking to kids and stuff like that, keeping them from, doing the wrong thing. And, of course, that mother, that woman that's going around on Facebook who snatched her son.
Yeah, I posted on my page. I would have done the same thing.
Yep, I would have been, Yep. And actually, she was on the news. She's going to be on Good Morning America tomorrow.
I mean, really, because either you snatch him up or the police going to snatch him up. I mean, what?
And do worse. Do much
exactly. I was thinking about when I saw her doing that, I was thinking about my grandmother because that is something she would do.
She sure would have, too.
And every other thing was bleep, bleep, bleep. I said, oh, my God, this is like a flashback. Like, that is something that they would have done.
Yes, with the quickness.
Not care who was around.
Right.
She said, she was like, I didn't want to think about no cameras. I just didn't want my son to end up like, that boy who got killed.
Yeah.
She saw him throwing rocks at the police, and she got out the house and grabbed him. I know that's what I'm talking about.
A real action. Yeah. So, on the line. Huh?
No, nothing. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, that just cancels out my imagination of the zoo, the animals out, because I'm more concerned. Like, are people going to be okay with all this? Good grief.
Hello?
Sorry about that. That was my computer.
Okay. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, so I was just concerned about the animals. I didn't want them attacking anybody. But
oh, my gosh, no.
I heard, too, by an eyewitness that was actually out there. They saw some Afghanistan run over a boy and then threw him in the van. So God knows where he went.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah,
what?
But you got to think about it. Yeah. So, and this eyewitness said that she don't think it's going to end tonight because she's out there witnessing all of this stuff. So, and it's still bad. So I just hope things die down. And
I hope so too. It's just a bad situation all the way around. That can be a 2-hour or more show.
Right.
We've done it before.
Yes. But on a lighter note, we have special guests tonight, and this is one of our brothers that we see often on the little circuit. And we're proud to have him on our
circuit.
Yes. Well, I'm conscious, but it was a circuit only because of the kind of the negative connotation with that word lately. You know, it's not been, you know, a lot of people haven't been representing their word too well, and I just think it's like another label to box people in. So, but we definitely enjoy this brother when we see him. He's multi-talented. He's a herbalist. The last time one of the times we saw him, he was playing drums at Dr. Ivy's event, and we had so much fun. The vibrations was raised. I mean, it was just like a very fun experience, and it just moved a lot of stagnant energy around.
Mm-hmm.
But
most definitely.
And so
yeah, song we all out there.
Yeah, we were
out there dancing, and that energy going.
Yes. So the song we're gonna play tonight, it would definitely lift your spirits and move some of that stagnant energy you might be holding on to around, and just get you in the mood. So we just challenge you to get up and dance and just let the spirit of the drumming just take over you and just lift the vibration up. So Sister Love, I believe you have the song. You want to introduce the song?
Yeah, I have this song. It is called More Love. More love. So that's exactly what we need. Always need more love. All right, guys, sit back, get y'all our tea, and, get ready for the show. All right. Bye. All right. That was it. More Love by the Spirit Ensemble. And I was talking to Dr. Yew earlier, and he said that was his dad's band. His dad was in that band. So that's awesome.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. It's really raised my vibration.
Absolutely. I got up and got my little dance on.
It's something about the drum that just wakens you up. I mean, you hear that beat, you just can't stop. You just can't be still.
Nope.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, we are definitely proud to have Dr. Yew on tonight.
Yes.
Just getting things together here.
Well, we're going to tell our audience a little bit about Dr. Yew. He is known online also as Yuma Bellomee. Dr. Yew is a certified holistic health consultant, herbalist, wellness advocate, educator, and musical artist who has been featured on numerous radio programs, natural hair, health and beauty expos, magazine articles, community and school programs. Also, he's been featured as a speaker and workshop facilitator on holistic wellness. And he is the founder of Yew 360 Holistic Health and Wellness, LLC, and he's a member of the African Holistic Health Association. And if you want to see, check out some of Dr. Yew's products, you can go to www.yew360.com. That's www.yew360.com. So without further ado, we would like to welcome Dr. Yew. Brother Yew, greetings. How are you doing this evening?
Peace, peace. Everything is well. How about yourself?
Everything
Wonderful. How you doing?
To be here with y'all.
Finally.
Yes.
Finally. It's a pleasure.
Likewise.
So, Dr. Yew, can you please tell us how you began your journey of herbals and spirituality? Was this something that you, as a child or as you grew up, you developed this?
Well, I always like to say that it started with my home life when I was young. Just my grandparents, my parents sharing with me the effects that, foods and other things around have on my health. As a young child, I remember the first thing that I was told in that context was that carrots were good for my eyes. And I was maybe about 4 years old at the time when my grandmother was like, eat those carrots, they're good for your eyes. And it was like a light bulb just clicked inside of me, like, wow, and then I would do a little thing where I would open my eyes wider after I would take a bite of the carrot, just the imagination running away kind of thing.
Right.
But, I also had a cousin who's a dental hygienist, and so she would talk with me about not eating candy that much and the effect that it has on teeth in terms of building cavities and, all of those kinds of things. So my mother, when we moved out of my grandparents' house who were from the South, my mother never cooked or brought pork in the home. And not only that, but taught us why. Because pork could potentially give us worms or parasites. So it didn't even have to be something that was very in-depth, but it was just that the seed was planted. I used to see my father make different health shakes and smoothies and use things like the blackstrap molasses and, a lot of things that you would find in a health food store. When I would spend time with my father, he would have those kinds of things there. And so fast forward and going down the line, my grandmother actually gave me my first experience that I recall with herbs. And my grandmother was a nurse by trade. But, she also was very familiar, especially being from South Carolina, and having her father, I believe, was a full-blooded Cherokee. And very into, the whole herbal medicine piece. So I remember being stung by a bee, and my grandmother used to smoke cigarettes. And I came in, and she could see that something was wrong. I told her I was stung by a bee. She took out her Marlboro cigarette, which I hated. She took the tobacco out, and she wetted it underneath the faucet, and went and taped it to my chest where the bee sting was. And I kid you not, in about maybe a minute flat, the pain from the bee sting had totally disappeared.
Oh, wow.
And it totally changed my perspective on how I even look at cigarettes.
Right.
So, my father, when I was around my last year in high school, my father, I was walking in this festival in New York where I'm originally from. And these two herbalists, natural healers, were in the park, and my father knew them. And he introduced me to them and was telling me, like, yeah, well, these are the people who, they heal all kinds of things and whatnot. And so, it was like, okay. And then when we were walking, he showed me where, or when we were leaving the festival, rather, he showed me where one of their stores was. And so after I graduated high school, I was looking for a job, and I wound up just like spirit hit me and just said, why don't you check out that health store where, my father had showed me. So I went in there and I wound up being employed, long story short. And not at that particular one, but the other health store. And I stayed there from, 1999 all the way up until about 2008.
Oh, wow.
And just the wealth of knowledge and experiences that I was exposed to in that environment was a huge inspiration to me wanting to do what I'm currently doing in terms of helping people and utilizing herbs and utilizing natural foods and other elements of the earth and, other metaphysical ideologies and things of that nature, because I saw practically firsthand how effective it was. In the midst of a lot of the propaganda saying that these things cannot be helped by any other means than the allopathic medical way of drugs and surgeries and radiation and, all of those different types of procedures that they utilize that harm the body. And really nobody is cured or able to rid themselves of these diseases, or it's a small percentage of people who do really do a full recovery going through that system. And then I'm seeing the majority of people who are coming through this health store and getting advice and getting herbs and things like that have a much better recovery, having a much better quality of life. I'm hearing their testimonials. I'm hearing about their children. I'm seeing their children. And so it's like this, it's right in front of my face. And so it's like, wow, when one of the things that really, really stimulated me personally to learn about it was being there and being young and being asked a lot of questions by people who were coming in and didn't know anything about natural supplements or herbs or anything like that. They would hear that, go to this store is good, or, they have a lot of things that can help you there, or, the dread because the Baba or the elder who was one of my mentors, was, in Jamaican by nationality. But, people would hear about him and from all different walks of life, and they would come through there and would just have these amazing stories, and some of which you can actually see the difference in people,
Right.
So people coming in and they're asking me because I'm there, and you have to remember I'm coming in fresh out of high school, so I'm like 19, 20 years old, and I know absolutely nothing. So I said, no, I can't have that. I got to learn something. So I would just, devote myself to study just so I wouldn't be feeling awkward when I'm in that situation. And I got to know and pick up so much that people started coming and asking me questions because they knew I knew, as opposed to me just being there.
Right.
And turning other people around and having them come in and dealing with me and whatnot. And I worked my way up to working many different roles around that particular, atmosphere until I decided to really take things to a next level and branch out and do it on my own. But it was a huge, huge influence on me, and I give that atmosphere the credit for a lot of what I know. Even if it didn't come directly from there, as well as my family.
Wow. So how did you end? Okay, you started in South Carolina. Then
I started in New York.
Oh, you started in New York. Okay, your grandmother was from South Carolina. Okay, because I thought it was real interesting. Your grandmother, she wasn't in the cooking pork, especially because, you know, down south it's like
No, she was. My mother wasn't.
Oh, your mother wasn't? Okay.
Yeah, my mother wasn't because, you know, my mother just was around, you know, at that time frame when she was coming up in New York. That was a time frame where a lot of people were starting to become more conscious of self or have more self-awareness, you know, where you have the elders like the ancestors, Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark, and, you know, many of the other people who were coming through the city in Harlem and all of that teaching, Dick Gregory and so many other names that you could really throw out there that were involved in that whole movement. Just being aware about ourselves culturally, health-wise, and otherwise. So, you know, my mother and my father were very into that movement when it was happening and kind of just coming about into the city areas of New York City. Mm-hmm. So, you know, they had a little bit of a different level of consciousness than my grandparents, so to speak, on my mother's side, who I lived with most of my life. But, you know, they weren't, say, as deep into it as I am now, but they still laid that foundation where they implanted a certain level of consciousness in myself and my siblings that allowed it to grow and develop.
Wow. So are you the only one in your family that is into that specializes in herbals?
As far as I know at the moment, yes. You know, but the other members of my family all kind of deal with it to some degree in terms of personal use. You know, so that's a good thing to see, is that because a lot of times in the holistic health arena, you see that one person might be into that and then the rest of the family just totally shuts it down. And I've seen that. I know a lot of people are experiencing that, nodding their heads out there if they're listening. But, yeah, you see that so often. So I'm really, really thankful that I have family members who are mostly receptive at the very least to getting outside of the standard allopathic medical system and knowing that there's something else that could potentially benefit them.
Right. Oh, wow. Now, how did you end up in Washington, D.C.?
I came here actually with my ex-wife, and we moved here because we thought that it would be a good area to really to live, to be able to develop and to help a lot of the community out this way. That it would be a good opportunity for us and a good way for us to really move and influence the community here and further the movement. So that's what really brought me here in the first place. Okay.
And so you still commute between here and New York, or you're just mainly in the D.C. area?
I'm mainly in the D.C. area, but I do commute to New York. I still have family there. I still have my community there that I grew up with, that I keep very close contact with. So there are times where I'll travel up there for different events or programs or just to visit, you know, to keep that contact and never forget where I came from.
Yes, that's very important. Very important. So what I wanted to ask you was about what major diseases do you see, or I'll say, I ask what is the number one major disease that you see affecting our black community?
In terms of what I see personally, I would have to go with womb issues for women. Yeah, womb issues, particularly fibroids, is a huge thing. And I was looking at or refreshing my memory, I should say, on some of the statistics on that before calling in. And it's estimated that about 70 to 80% of African American women will develop fibroid tumors at some point in their life.
Wow.
Now, that's a large percentage.
That's a lot. And what do you think is the main cause of these fibroids in our community?
Well, we have to look at the foods that we're eating first and foremost. That's on the surface level, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
The foods that we're eating, most of which are not even really foods. But of course, in holistic health, we're dealing with things that are beyond the physical also. So you also have an energy that directs buildups and waste and things like that in the body to certain areas.
Mm-hmm.
And so it goes hand in hand. One is the foods, so when we're looking at that on a physical level, not eating the right foods, things like dairy products is a huge contributing factor. The white sugar, the refined oils, a lot of the things that we know are unhealthy for us. At least the majority of us, I would say, know that many of these foods are unhealthy for us, but we eat them on a regular basis because we're conditioned to. So there's a mental element of it, there's an emotional element of it that goes with that. And one of the things emotionally that really stands out is the imbalance of relationships between our women and our men. And the anger that a lot of women hold on to, whether consciously or subconsciously, towards some of the men that have been in their lives or that are currently in their lives. So when you couple that with, or pair that with, the element of not eating right, not exercising, and just the basic things that are used that we need to sustain life and healthy life, sunlight, fresh air, water, all of those things like that, proper rest. And then you pile on a whole lot of stress, you create an environment that leads to disaster. And so that's what we see happening in our communities on a wide scale, and it may manifest itself in different ways, and there are particular energies and situations that may be associated with different conditions. But at the root of it all is pretty much the same causes that are contributing to these things, and the majority of it is lifestyle related. So that is what I tend to see. The other things that are really, really prevalent, and it's like the statistics don't lie. When you look at the statistics of what affects the African American community or the black community globally, really, but especially here in the United States, it's like those top three: the heart disease, the cancer, the strokes, which are the top three leading causes of death in African Americans, are the things that you will tend to see very prevalently. I just heard some news yesterday that one of my people up in Baltimore just had a stroke last month. I'm currently dealing with a few people who have cancer. I'm always dealing with somebody who has high blood pressure, always dealing with somebody who's diabetic. It's like these things are constants in our community, and it's directly related to the lifestyle, the amount of stress that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, and just not taking that time for ourselves to have healthy habits, and lack of quality information.
Absolutely, I agree with that. So what do you think, Dr. Yew, far as healing on? Say for instance, you're trying to treat somebody with the herbs, and they receive healing. They get healed from an ailment. Can that ailment come back if they're not healed on a spiritual plane?
Absolutely, it can.
Okay.
And that's actually, you see that a lot through the medical treatments. And I'm not saying that you don't see that through the herbs and things like that too, because you can. But and that's like if you're not addressing the situation as a whole. That's why, I'm really emphatic about the concept of holistic health, spirit, mind, body, and environment. We're looking at addressing any issue from all of those different perspectives because they're all one and they all integrate. When you look at how the allopathic or Western medical ideology or philosophy goes, they tend to separate everything. So they focus on just the symptom of what causes an issue. The symptom of the issue at hand, and not necessarily what causes it. So let's say if we're dealing with somebody who has diabetes, for example. Diabetes, first of all, many people don't know what it is. So here we go with the misinformation. Many people don't know what it is. So because they don't know what it is, they're not treating it properly. They don't really know how to treat it properly because they don't know what it is in the first place that they're dealing with. So when they go to the doctors are not treating it from a perspective of what it is. Our basic understanding of what diabetes is, on a general scale, is that it's sugar in the blood. That's not what diabetes is, but if you're looking at it like, okay, diabetes is sugar in the blood, then your approach is, okay, well, let's just get the sugar out the blood. So you'll have things and different pharmaceutical drugs and whatnot that are aiming towards getting the sugar out the blood. So, okay, now that normalizes your blood sugar temporarily, but the issue is still there. So anytime that you do something that is out of balance with your body, your blood sugar is going to shoot right back up to an abnormal and potentially dangerous level. So when we're looking at things from a holistic perspective, we're dealing with, okay, well, what is it that is causing the sugar to be piled in the blood at such a rate or at such a level where it's detrimental to our bodies? And then we look at that and we say, okay, let's target that. So then when your blood sugar is normalized, then you're focusing on keeping it at a balance through your lifestyle habits, as opposed to saying, okay, I'm going to take this drug to get it down, and then I'm going to eat a donut, and it's going to shoot back up. So it's a lot different in terms of perspective. But even still, again, there's that energetic element, the emotional element. So say somebody who is diabetic has an issue in their relationship. So now the relationship is going to bring forth an energy inside of them that's going to have a physical reaction inside of the body and contribute to an imbalance again.
Wow.
So that's where you would tend to see a lot of things resurface, so to speak, is because a lot of people tend not to look at, or even if they do look at it, they may not want to deal with these emotional and energetic concerns and lifestyle patterns that contribute to these conditions.
Okay. Now, what would you say that the energetic pattern would be for cancer?
Well, for cancer is associated with a lot of resentment, held on resentment, and people who, for lack of a better way of putting it, tend to overexert themselves and do too much and don't get the same back in return, don't get the same energy back in return.
Okay. And that's what causes the resentment, because they don't pretty much voice what, their boundaries and whatnot.
Yeah, and this not everybody that is the same, but that tends to be a pattern. It tends to be an energetic pattern, and I've known and have dealt with, to some degree, several people who were diagnosed with cancer. And my own father actually, transitioned and was diagnosed with cancer before he transitioned. When I say transition, for anybody listening who may not be familiar with what I mean, is passed away.
Okay.
But, I've seen my own father go through that. I've seen, my great aunt transition with cancer. I have a cousin right now who I just found out was diagnosed with cancer. So it's very big. And that, again, coupled with the food patterns because and lifestyle habits, because there are so many documented associations with our things in our lifestyle. And it's not just food, but food plays a major part. I always say food is like one of the things that we do every day that has a direct effect on our health. So when people tend to overlook food, we know that this is documented, it's factual, that our foods have a direct effect on our health and our bodies. And so we're doing every day. We eat multiple times a day at that. Some people 2 times, 3 times, 4 or 5 times a day. And what we're taking in has a direct effect on the state of our health. So if we're not eating the right things on a daily basis, even if we say we eat 5 times a day, and some people be like, yeah, well, I eat my fruits and my vegetables and yada, yada, and they might eat fruits and vegetables maybe twice out of that 5 times a day. The rest is all junk food, cakes, donuts, potato chips, sodas. I mean, you name it. There's a whole slew of things out here. Fast foods, McDonald's and KFC and Burger King and all of those different places out there, Chick-fil-A and even some of the lesser ones. But they're still kind of crazy, too, Subways and the Chipotles and all of them places like that sell poor quality foods in terms of our health and well-being. So it's like when we're doing these things on a daily basis, our bodies do very well to resist being broken down to that kind of a level. But it's only but so long you can abuse something and it not be damaged.
Right. So we should not, for the better part of our health, eat at these places because a lot of times they'll advertise this is organic and this is and that, but I still feel like there's some chemical somewhere because you have to preserve it to get it to wherever it's going, and even
Absolutely.
though they'll still say it's 100% organic. I know Chipotle is really famous for saying that all of their vegetables and the meat's organic and that type of thing. But I think, that's when you cook it or fix it yourself, And how many times a day should we be eating raw vegetables and fruit?
Well, I mean, that's relative to each individual's needs, and that's one of the philosophies that I have in dealing with health, is that health is not always cookie cutter. A lot of people tend to take a cookie cutter approach with their recommendations about health, but everybody's not the same. Just like you wouldn't feed a baby the same thing that you would feed a 35-year-old man who weighs 300 pounds. You know what I mean? The body's needs are different. They're in a different stage in life. They're going through different experiences. Their bodies have different tolerances. So all of those things have to come into play, different requirements, et cetera, nutritionally. So something that a 300-pound, 35-year-old man may eat might kill a child who's 1 year old.
Right.
So it's when I look at different people in different circumstances, I tend to make recommendations based on where they are. Somebody who is dealing with, say, I'll use the example for diabetes again, just to keep it there because it's so common. I'm not going to tell them to eat fruits 4 times a day. Where somebody who might have high blood pressure and not have diabetes and may have a tendency for blood clots, may be better off eating fruit 4 times a day. You know what I mean? So it's just a difference in where people are. General maintenance, you know, the average recommendation is give or take 5 servings or so. You know, so I think that's a pretty safe thing to do. To say at least about 4 to 5 servings at least of fruits and vegetables daily. You know, but how many of us really do that?
Right. So do you recommend any, like, substitution, if, you know, for people who don't like chewing? Because, you know, some people that don't like to chew their vegetables, they rather chew like me.
Yeah, and that's cool, too. You know, juicing and blending, they definitely have their place. So I don't down that. At the same time, you know, certain things are going to be better for certain people. So even with, you know, with juicing and things like that, like I love juicing, but a lot of times if I know somebody is underweight, I'm not going to recommend them to juice. You know, just things that make sense, and a lot of people may not look at it at that kind of a format. But I do personally.
Okay.
But yeah, you know, just in general, I think that's a safe recommendation for the average person is just to make sure that you're incorporating those things. And when I say vegetables, you know, I'm talking about things that are like spinach and greens and broccoli and things like that. Because some people will say, you know, the confusion starts to set in. And people will say stuff like, yeah, I had vegetables today. Oh, yeah, what did you eat? French fries, because a potato is a vegetable.
Right.
No, that's not, you know, we have to get our definition straight, because one of the things that with us having that lack of information and perspective on what health is, in terms of practicality for us, you know, when we allow other entities to define what certain things are, and they have an agenda that's not in our best interest, then we fall victim to that agenda.
Absolutely.
So we have to be aware of certain things that are put out there, you know. So vegetables, meaning, you know, your green vegetables, your vegetables that have some color to it typically. And not things that are artificially colored, you know, but things that, you know, are your green vegetables, your red, yellow, etc.
Okay. And what vegetable would you recommend that's like high in antioxidants?
Wow, well, pretty much anything. Anything that has color to it, especially the darker colors. Darker colors tend to have the higher antioxidant properties to them. So things like blackberries and blueberries and your dark green leafy vegetables like the dark kales and collard greens and spinach and anything that's black lentils, black beans, black sesame seeds, you know, all of those different things like that have very high antioxidant values.
Okay. Now I have another question now that I want to ask you. I have to ask you because it's part of our culture now. It's been legalized in a few states so far. Just want to get your take on this cannabis. What's the rundown on it?
Well, my take on it is that it's an herb just like any other herb. You know, different herbs are not going to have the same effect on the body, but that doesn't mean that the herb itself is necessarily harmful when used in the proper context. What I see personally, what a lot of people do with the cannabis is abuse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not healthy to take it and burn it and smoke that 3, 4, 5 times a day.
Mhm.
The lungs are not meant to tolerate smoke very well.
Mhm.
When that has an impact on the liver, that has an impact on the kidneys. You know, so these things are not healthy, and your body will show physical signs of that too. You know, when you look at people who have smoked for a long time, things like red eyes, black lips, black fingernails, or discolored lips and fingernails that tend to be dark, which represents a deprivation of oxygen inside of the body in those particular areas. You know, you can look at it personality-wise and how it affects certain people. And not to say that it's everybody, but some people tend to lose motivation. You know, and kind of slows people down and whatnot. And then there's so many different varieties, a lot of which have been chemically treated. Now, I'm against those things. I'm not against using marijuana as a plant. You know, there are many different ways to utilize it besides smoking.
Right.
You know, you can vaporize it. You can use it in tea. You can use it in an extract form. You know, you can use it in food to some degree. You know, and so there's many different ways that it can be used, and the emphasis tends to be put on the smoking element because that's the thing that has become so taboo that it's like the infatuation with something that somebody says that you can't have.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like I was just seeing a whole movement develop around that. And then you have so many, for lack of a better way of putting it, excuses and things like that. You know, what justifications is the right word that I'm looking for. You know, to justify that abuse of the plant, in which case they're using it like a drug instead of like an herb.
Right.
But the herb itself has a lot of healing benefits and properties to it. And even in smoking, it still has its benefits, as we know. For anybody who knows people who smoke, you know it has benefits, or if you smoke yourself, is used for things like settling the stomach. Some people use the vapors from it for breathing and respiratory concerns, and some of the research recently that's come out about it has talked about its anti-cancer benefits, settling the nerves, and so many different benefits are associated with that as well. Spiritually, allowing people to be more spiritually open and creative. So those are some great, things that can come from the use of the cannabis plant. But it's just, again, we want to maintain that balance if we're looking at the totality of health.
Right. And I was just wondering, why do you think they legalized it in certain areas, especially because, the effects when you smoke it, it can make people, like you said, less motivated. I just wondering what kind of jobs do people have where they're able to, get a prescription for this and be still able to function at work and, that type of thing. But, I've seen on TV where they have bars now that you go and you get your wine and then they put marijuana smoke on top of your wine. And
oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of creativity out there.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah,
but
but what? Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to respond to that in terms of the legalization. I really don't trust that. What the medical marijuana, quote unquote, has been around for quite some time. And I know some people who have used medical marijuana, and they will attest to this is a different grade. And it's not the same as a lot of the street marijuana that's out there. My personal opinion is that it's an attempt to control the quality and some of the financial element that goes along with it. And anytime that I see the medical establishments and the government have a hand in something in terms of a natural element, they're tampering with it somehow, and they're making it into something more harmful or something that's going to have an effect on us that's not going to be in our best favor. So when I'm looking at that, and then I'm seeing news articles about Monsanto growing genetically modified marijuana, you know, it really like just reaffirms the things that I've been feeling from jump, you know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's probably like hybrid. It's probably hybrid marijuana or something like that.
Genetically put chemicals in there. Use chemicals to create it. It's best to, if they legalize it, that you can grow it yourself. So.
Yeah, there's a limit on it. And that's the thing, there's a limit on it. It's a limitation to that, but, you know, at least it's there.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so people think I'm crazy when I would have tea. I would make tea with mine. I wouldn't smoke it. Everybody looking at me all side-eyed. I'm like, you're not supposed to smoke it, you know. I mean, it's not good for your lungs or for your body to smoke it. I'm sipping tea. People giving me look. You doing what? I said tea.
Yeah, and I had read John Hopkins did a study on it. If you smoke it, but you smoke it once, if you smoked it, it had to be once or twice a week, and they found it elevated people's IQs, but it couldn't have been no more. You can't do it no more than once or twice. It's their study. But I thought that was interesting. But I've heard the same thing that you said, as far as it's a different grade, because a neighbor of mine, he has a card, and he was like, it's different. It's not it's not the same. And he also had a bottle of THC that he said he puts in his tea, and that's, you know, all government distributed.
That's the kind of thing that I was just talking about. It's like, you know, that's what they do. Is they will look at what is the active chemical in this, because a lot of people may not know, but that's how a lot of these pharmaceutical drugs are manufactured. They utilize constituents that actually come from herbs for over 50% of the pharmaceutical drugs that are out, and it's always been that way. They look at, you know, the chemical compounds or molecules that they can identify and how it interacts with the cells. And they say, okay, well, this particular compound is responsible for this effect that it has in the body. And they isolate that and they concentrate it and they add fillers and binders in terms of pills. But with the liquid, you know, you just have a concentrated substance. But those substances in high concentrations are more toxic to your body. There's a reason it's in a low concentration inside of a natural herb. And there are other components of that herb that work to balance it out, so the body doesn't have a stress reaction, so to speak, to whatever is taking in. You know, it's just like a lot of people may not know that arsenic, which is toxic or regarded as toxic, but it's actually in asparagus.
I didn't know that.
And a lot of people wouldn't know that. And if you're looking at it from the perspective of how the pharmaceutical industry would, Okay, well, it's arsenic. Let's concentrate it. And next thing you know, you end up with a bunch of dead people.
Right.
So it's just the balance that is present in nature. Sometimes when it gets tampered with in a way that's unnatural, then it becomes harmful. You can't do that with every substance.
Now, how does cannabis oil help heal cancer? I've been reading a lot about the effects that it has on cancer, and even parents have been using it with their children. Have you heard anything about that?
I've seen different articles in dealing with that, and maybe one or two of the colleagues that I have that I communicate with online have mentioned utilizing that. I'm not really sure of their experiences per se. I can't say that I've experienced that personally in terms of people that I've dealt with. But in terms of the studies that have been done, the cannabis plant in general, the whole plant, or at least the parts that tend to be used, the leaves and the seeds, have compounds that are known to kill cancer cells and stimulate the immune system. They have kind of a protective effect on the body. And they also help with alleviating stress, which is also a huge help as well. They help with nourishing the brain, which is a huge help as well, especially the pineal gland. So anytime you have something that's going to work towards nourishing the pineal gland, you're going to have a huge boost to your immune system off top, because the pineal gland is part of what really rules the communication in the body in terms of the melanin.
Okay. Now, what about, don't mean to make this a druggy night, but I was going to ask you about, there's a few other herbs I wanted to ask you about, like far as enlightenment. The mushroom. Have you heard about the studies at Johns Hopkins? They were studying the mushrooms. They have something in them called phytocillin, and it supposedly clears like neural pathways that might have been giving people like negative thoughts and having them in like in negative states of consciousness. And once they started giving the people the mushrooms and whatnot, they checked back with them in a year, and they were like, they were living their lives. They were just living it up, as far as not having those same negative patterns over and over again. And so they're doing more studies on that. Do you think that the mushroom is a magical cure-all for like schizophrenia or certain type of brain disorders?
Well, it's interesting because I was having this discussion with a sister of mine the other day, and I don't really subscribe to any one thing as a cure-all. I feel like, ultimately there's multiple things that have to be addressed, and that's just been from my experience. I haven't dealt with anything outside of the legal spectrum, so with that, I can't really speak on that from an experiential standpoint. However, in terms of what I've read and studied on those kinds of elements, they definitely do have a powerful effect on the body in terms of being able to release those inhibitions, so to speak, just to keep it in practical terminology. And in doing so, there's a spiritual element where it allows us to have higher levels of understanding. And once we're able to perceive things from a different realm, then you're working on a different element of the holistic spectrum. So it's beyond just physical, And so those are a lot of those things that work on that spiritual realm in terms of opening us up and raising our consciousness level, like the mushrooms and like the marijuana, tend to be the ones that are outlawed here in the United States. You know, and so I've even heard there's a couple other herbs that are used in that type of context too. Ceremonially, they tend to be used in that way, but things like the iboga and the ayahuasca, you know, which are reported and reputed to cure drug addiction. You know, but they function in that similar kind of fashion where it's really raising the state of the consciousness of the individual and allowing them to really deal with past issues that may have contributed to blockages physically and emotionally and spiritually and energetically, and allowing them to look at them things from a different perspective, because when you really hear the people's recounts of these situations, it's pretty much the same across the board. So they're looking at it from a different perspective, and it's like a different sense of enlightenment that they receive from utilizing these things. And so they don't have the desire to go back to something that they might have been using to cover up for those issues that they didn't want to deal with.
Wow. So when they ingest these particular herbals, are they accessing different parts of the subconscious, maybe like negative thought forms that they created?
Yes.
Okay. And then I guess, is it by facing them that they can heal from them, or what is it exactly?
Absolutely.
That... Oh, okay.
You know, and when we're looking at anything that we want to heal from, we have to address what the issue is. You know, so if the issue is, you know, let's say we're afraid of dogs, because I can speak for myself in my experience. I was bitten by a dog when I was a child. So I have, or I've had, I should say, you know, a fear of dogs growing up after that experience, because I always go back to the experience of when I was bitten by the dog. And it was a dog that was like a family dog at that. You know, so how do you get past that kind of a fear or that kind of an experience? Well, you put yourself in a situation where you're addressing it. Okay, so I'm in a situation where I'm in close quarters with the dog that's not on a leash and, you know, not behind the gate, and I have a bond or a relationship with the dog. So it's changing my perspective on dogs. You know, so now when I'm looking at a dog, I may not associate the dog, every dog, with that same dog that might have bit me when I was young. But I have, okay, well, maybe that dog bit me, but maybe these dogs are not like that. Or why did the dog bite me in the first place? Maybe the dog was scared, or, you know what I'm saying? So when you start to look at things from a different perspective, it allows you to heal from those kinds of traumas.
Wow. That's amazing. So so these issues, when they're confronted, if you can look at them from like you said, a different perspective, or from your higher self, where you're kind of like observing, being the observer, then participating in what it looks like, is that a way, you know, you can you know, be healed from it. So
you know, it's like taking yourself out of the situation and being more objective about it. And it releases a lot of inhibitions and that keeps us attached and glued to the situation. And when you listen to anybody who has a recount and has had a positive and successful experience in utilizing these herbs, they all speak about out-of-body experiences. You know, so it just confirms, you know, that same principle.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So This is a question I normally ask our guests since they're on the Goddess Suite. What was your most profound spiritual encounter?
Wow. That's a difficult question.
That's what they don't say.
That is a difficult question. I've had so many different, things that I would consider spiritual encounters happen with me. Sometimes somebody who I don't know or don't know well will just pick up on whatever it is that I'm emitting energetically and just come to me and give me a message about that. And it's 100% on point.
Wow.
And I've had that happen to me so many times I probably couldn't count. But it's just being aware of those things will bring more situations like that to you, particularly when you're receptive to it.
So what would that be considered, like telepathy, or they reading your energy?
Yeah, reading energy. I wouldn't call it telepathy per se, but some people call that like psychic intuition, or But I'm definitely around a lot of people who had that ability, and are very good with it at that.
Wow, that's very profound. So this happens to you more than not when you have these encounters. Do they tell you things like you were thinking, or just something that might be going on inside?
Yeah, it could be both.
Oh, okay, wow.
It could be both,
That is a profound.
It's real. It's real out here.
I'm telling you, I can believe it, because the people that, that circle is vicious. The community is beautiful. It's beautiful.
The thing is too is that there are times when I've done that, and not necessarily realized it.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, Yuma. It doesn't say drop call.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But I was just saying, there's times when where I've done that and just haven't realized it, but somebody may come back to me at a later point in time and be like, "Wow, everything that you said was true."
And that's by you being, you said, receptive.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Yuma, let's see if we have any callers. You willing to take some?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, the callers are just listening. No one that has their hands raised, so they're just listening in.
Right. All right.
Okay.
Good.
I have a question for you, Yuma. What type of I was kind of browsing your website. What type of healing services do you offer?
Well, the main thing that I offer is personal consultations, dealing with holistic health and just maintenance or addressing a health concern or ailment, and just advising from a holistic standpoint what can be done to bring better balance to the person and the situation that they may be experiencing. So that's the main thing. I also do assessments where I include like a physical examination I take a urine sample, do pH tests, saliva sample, blood pressure readings. I do ear candling. So those are pretty much the main services that I offer. I also do custom herbal blends with people as well, and also formulate or formulate and co-formulate herbal formulas for people, whether it be individuals or for other holistic health service providers.
That's nice. That's awesome. I'm going to order me something.
Now, you said something about ear candling. What's the benefits? I had it done once. Me and my sister had that done before. What is the significance behind it?
Well, ear candling is, for those who are not familiar with what ear candling is, it is like a hollow candle-shaped wax that's wrapped in gauze, and the tip of it is inserted into the ear canal. And when in the other end, that's the blunt end, is lit on fire. And it creates kind of a vortex inside of the hollow element of the candle, which draws out wax and mucus from the ear. So it helps to relieve a lot of pressure for people who have heavy earwax buildup. It's a good way to remove that without it pushing the wax farther down into the ear canal, like Q-tips and many other methods of things that people stick in their ears would do. It helps to relieve pressure buildup, and it helps to some degree with sinus issues too. And people who are hard of hearing, because a lot of people who are hard of hearing are hard of hearing because of excessive earwax buildup. So it can also help with that and sinus issues because the sinus cavities in the ear canal is connected. So those are, the main things that it tends to be used for. And it's definitely effective in many cases. Not to say all cases, but many cases it's very effective. And I've had some stories that I can tell from the ear candling. And you can actually see some of the wax come on the inside of the candle if you unravel a gauze after it's burnt down. Of course, we're not burning anybody's ear, but we burn it down to a reasonable length where we can take it out and you can unravel the gauze and see how much earwax was extracted. And some people have very little, and some people have earwax that can be built up to about the size of a pen top.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
Wow.
And sometimes, I don't do just one candle, but I might do maybe two up to three sets. And I've had situations where people have had severe hearing loss, and when I've done 3 sets, all 3 sets came back like the size of a pen top with the wax and mucus inside of the ear.
Wow. So this mucus, now I've read Dr. Savy say it's the cause of all disease. Do you agree with that? Do you think that's plays a major role in a lot of the disease that people are having these days?
I definitely feel that it plays a major role. When you look at the majority of any health disparities that are going on, and especially when we talk about the foods that most of us tend to eat, most of them are foods that cause inflammation and mucus. Mucus is pretty much a protective covering, and it's designed to protect the body. So one of the main reasons why a lot of people have so much mucus is because they're eating a lot of things that cause inflammation.
Wow.
So the two kind of go hand in hand. And when you look at inflammation and you look at all of the major health concerns, practically anything you can name is linked with inflammation to some degree. Practically anything you can name.
And so that would be foods like dairy,
anything, practically anything that comes from an animal. You know, the animal flesh, dairy products, eggs. Then you can go into even on the plant-based side of things, a lot of things that tend to be processed foods. You know, like the white wheat bread and white rice and white flour and, you know, all of those things, white sugar, white salt, and even brown sugar and anything that's taken away from its natural form, refined oils, all of those things like that tend to cause inflammation inside of the body. Things that are extremely high protein tend to cause inflammation inside of the body, or can be linked to that in excess at the very least.
Okay. And that leads me to the next question I've always had about, I know you heard of this particular diet. It's called the Atkins diet.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. How do people, I guess, regulate their blood pressure, disease, and all of that on a diet that's, you know, pretty much open like that? I mean, I know they cut out everything white, but they eat a lot of meat, a lot of grease, a lot of...
Well, let me say this. The diet never claimed to be healthy. It just claimed to help people to lose weight.
Right,
which it did, because they're cutting out all of these refined carbohydrates and things like that, which a lot of people have trouble digesting and whatnot. And it kind of acts like glue in the intestinal system. But on the same token, it's not healthy by any means. And Atkins himself died from a heart attack. You know, so, I mean, what more needs to be said?
Yeah, and so is that worse than the South Beach diet?
I mean, I don't really go with those fad diets because, again, you know, that's a cookie-cutter approach. Everybody's body is not the same. And in general, you know, from the things that I've read, studied, researched, and experienced myself, I have the standpoint that human beings are not natural flesh eaters. So things that, you know, naturally come from animals are typically not good for us because that's not what our biological makeup was designed to handle. You know, when you look at nature as an example, and you look at the patterns in nature for the animals that tend to eat other animals, for the animals that tend to eat plants, we're more synonymous to the animals that tend to eat plants. And if you even go to the natural, what do you call it, the Museum of Natural History, the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History right here in D.C., they have an exhibit that shows that the first people ate plants. That's right. This is historical. You know, so when people start talking about all of this stuff that incorporates cooked animal flesh at that, which, you know, nothing in nature needs to cook anything. You know, we're talking about cooked, rotted animal flesh and blood. You know, which is that's a whole different thing, because I know some people who are into the whole religious sphere, particularly in Christianity, and they use the thing, well, It never says that we can't eat the animal flesh, but it says we can eat animal flesh as long as it doesn't contain blood. And I'm like, what animal flesh doesn't contain blood?
Right.
You can go to any supermarket where they have chicken, ground beef, and just press the plastic and you can see the blood squirt out.
Yeah, on the squirt. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So do you so do you think like a lot of, well, I guess the indigenous people who are like hunters and gatherers, did they eat meat for like more religious reasons, you think, or for more as a form of survival?
For both purposes, as a form of survival and for religious purposes. In places where maybe the people may have been by the water, they may tend to eat more fish. You know, so in places where the plant life is more scarce, particularly for the amount of people that may inhabit that particular area, they may start looking to animals for that purpose. You know, that's why certain areas, you know, now even in Africa, they'll tend to do more root vegetables and things like that because maybe that particular area might be more desert-like. So they don't have the same amount of greenery that comes up. So they utilize what's available in their environment. You know, but it wasn't always that way in most of the areas when you look at the history of the earth. When you look at the Europeans and how the Europeans eat, which is what our current eating habits here in the United States really reflect, their historical presence didn't have that same, you know, greenery and whatnot in Europe. And so they tended to eat more animal flesh and you know, when they did have things, the grassy stuff come up like the wheat, etc., that was there, that's not even native to that area. But those kind of things were more, you know, were easier to come up in those areas and to cultivate. So they would take that and they would make things that would sustain them for longer periods of time because those things don't digest so quickly or easily inside of the body. So they're able to survive off of that for a longer period of time, as opposed to things that are easier to digest and transit through your system much more easily. So you're going to tend to deal with constipation and things like that if you're eating bread and meat 2 times, 3 times a day, when it might take, you know, meat or animal flesh to about 3 days to come out of your system. And it doesn't even fully come out. Yeah, it can take up to 3 days for 1 ounce of red meat. It can take up to 3 days to come out your system.
Wow. And are they the ones that invented the cheese too?
Yeah. You know, getting into the milk and milk is definitely not used as widespread in many countries in Africa, especially historically speaking. It was used, but it wasn't used as widespread as it is in Europe. You know, and then that fermentation process is to help with the digestibility of the dairy because it doesn't digest.
Wow. Because I was wondering, you know, their diets are so different. Go ahead, sister.
I was going to say my hairdresser, she's from a country in Africa. I can't think of the name of it. And she said that her mom used to make rice milk. So that's what they used to. That's what they did, rice milk. But she made it herself. And so it wasn't no animal milk-based milk.
Yeah, you know, but a lot of the cultures now, today, have been influenced. And because they've been influenced, then that reflects in some of the foods. So they're starting to eat some of the same or maybe even different unnatural items in their particular cultures, but the state of their health is changing as a result as well.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen some African tribes, they were like drinking cow blood, like they poked a hole in it, and they like do this like every so often. They'll like bleed it, drink it. What do you think about that? I know that's, you know, part of their something that they've been doing, but why would they drink blood? Do you have any idea?
Well, those things tend to be more ritualistic, spiritual practices.
Okay.
You know, blood in many traditional cultures is considered a sacred thing. You know, because the blood is the essence of life.
Right.
You know, so when you're looking at the essence of life in different animals, etc., you know, different animals may have different properties to them or may be associated with different spirits, where it's believed that if they intake the blood of this particular animal or maybe do something or a ritual involving a particular animal, that essence, you know, will benefit them in some way or another. You know, but that's more of a spiritual thing typically than a regular food practice. So it's not something that tends to be done regularly. But it's just that sometimes when people who don't know the culture see those kind of things, it's portrayed like this is a regular practice and it's something that's made out to look a certain way, you know, far back. Not to say that I agree with that at all or that I would do that myself, but just, you know, it's a different cultural perspective.
Right. Yeah, and they have such, I want to say, like, creative ways that they do things. I don't know if you've even seen this. This might be a little off topic, but it's a website called Odd Africa, and they have like a lot of videos about Africa, like things that, you know, will be taboo here in the United States. So it was this one particular tribe that when they go hunting, they dig holes in Mother Earth. And then they would, like, put their seed in Mother Earth, and when they come to the peak of orgasm, in their mind, they would see the animal that they are going to hunt, that they're going to catch. And I was just like, wow, that is like, isn't that similar to, like, pretty much like magic, you know, when you hold the thought, focus on the thought in your mind.
Right.
Manifest it. So I just thought at first, I was like, wow, this is weird. What are they doing? But that is not something you would see in the United States. But they, I mean, it had so much symbolism to what they were doing. I was like, wow, like, where did they come up with this stuff, you know? But, you know, you can kind of tell it's something that was divinely passed down, because who thinks like this, you know? That's some real high-level things.
Yeah, I mean, we got to look at this, that the original spiritualities and spiritual paths were based on nature and based on, you know, real, what we would call today metaphysical principles. You know, and so these things have been kind of looked at in a negative light for so long. But then when we really examine it and when scientific studies are done on it, they say, oh, snap, it got some factual basis to it. You know, so these are things that our ancestors were naturally in tune with, just by being in tune with the environment, being in tune with the energetic sphere, and living more according to nature. So they don't look at it from the same perspective. They look at it like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing to manifest my next meal, and if it works for them, why knock it? You know?
Right. I'm telling you, good grief! I'm just, hey, yeah, whatever works, and that's why I say they're so creative with it.
And at the same time, they're nourishing the earth. If you really look at it from that perspective, you know, they're really nourishing the earth. That's nutrients that are going back into the earth, so they're giving back.
Yeah.
Wow, that is deep. Absolutely deep.
Mother Earth is like, thank you.
I'm telling you now. So, Yuma, what are some of your favorite herbs that you like to use?
Oh, wow. Well, right now, I'm in the midst of using spikenard.
Okay.
Spikenard tea, which is a very good blood cleanser. It helps out with the adrenal glands, which control your or help to regulate your stress response. It can help with mental acuity, with calming the nerves, and to some degree metabolism.
Okay.
You know, so that's what I'm utilizing at the moment. I also like the herb Cardiarco. That's one of my personal favorites. In addition to the health benefits, which is another great anti-cancer herb, very useful for stimulating the immune system, for cleansing the lymphatic system. But I just love the way it tastes also.
Oh, and can you spell that again?
Cardiarco.
Cardiarco?
Cardiarco, which is P-A-U, then it's a separate word, D''A''R''C''O.
Okay, I've seen that somewhere. Okay, Cardiarco, okay.
Yep. So those are, two that I like. I also like sassafras. I like sarsaparilla. And the what's the other one I like? Coriander.
Coriander. Oh, yeah, I like
coriander
that. I love that too. I love that. I love it in the chai tea. It's really good.
Yeah, I use that fairly often, and sometimes I just use it in my food, and sometimes I use it in beverages. And even if I'm making smoothies or shakes, sometimes I'll put like a good half teaspoon of the coriander in there.
Okay.
The health benefits for it? Coriander can be very useful for strengthening the heart. It's helpful for regulating blood pressure. It can also be useful for arthritic pain. And for the kidneys, it acts as a natural diuretic. A lot of people don't know, too, that coriander is actually the same plant as cilantro.
Cilantro.
Yeah, coriander is the seed to the cilantro plant.
Yeah, I eat that in my salad a lot. I love the way it just tastes so fresh.
Yeah. So I love cilantro, too.
Yes. And I know it's good for removing heavy metals too. Well, the cilantro is.
Yes, absolutely good for that.
Really good.
Oh yeah.
Now what do you know about, or have you heard of the chaga mushroom?
Yes, I haven't used it as of yet. Nor have I really recommended it. But mushrooms in general, they tend to share properties. So if you talk about one mushroom, you pretty much are talking about all of them when you look at it from that kind of a perspective, because there are some, not to say that all of them are exactly the same, but they do tend to share health benefits. So mushrooms in general tend to be very good for stimulating the immune system, for helping to regulate the stress response, for controlling blood sugar, for blood pressure. just a whole host of different benefits, but especially that immune system element, the stress response, and for regenerating the body, particularly when it's been under stressful or damaging conditions. So it has a protective kind of an effect. It has an absorbing kind of an effect to it as well. And if you think about it, for anybody who has prepared mushrooms, and say if you would use an oil or something like that, the mushroom will tend to soak up the oil. If you put the mushroom in water, it'll tend to soak up the water. You know, so it has that kind of thing where it will tend to it can kind of soak up and remove toxins from the body.
Yeah, and because I used the chaga mushroom before, and I noticed when I first started taking it, I had pain, I'm assuming in my kidneys really bad. I guess it was detoxifying or drawing something out, but it has very high melanin content. I think this actually is the highest melanin content out of all the other plants and herbs. But that's one, and it's another one I was going to ask you. I haven't used it, but I was going to see. Have you heard of? I think it's called lion's mane. It looks like a lion's head.
Oh yeah, that's a mushroom too. I haven't, at least I don't think I've used that.
Okay.
But I've seen it around.
Okay.
Yeah, but I haven't used that one in particular. The ones I tend to use in terms of the mushrooms that I have more experience with are the reishi, the maitake, the shiitake, and some of the ones that tend to be, the more edible ones as well. But medicinally, the reishi and the maitake and the shiitake I use the most.
Okay. And what are the health properties of the reishi?
Pretty much the same thing, again, all of them kind of have a protective kind of effect for the body. They can be used to protect, even against things as rough as radiation. The mushrooms can have a protective and a regenerative effect against radiation. So I'll tend to use that or recommend it for a lot of people who are undergoing things like chemotherapy. Because it helps to take a lot of that strain off of the cells or help to make sure that the cells are not as damaged as they could be. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Immune system support and stress support are some of the main things that I tend to use those for.
Okay. And what are some of the ways we can kind of limit our radiation intake?
To limit radiation is in so many things. And radiation, I would say the first thing that comes to mind is the microwave, just to cut out microwave use.
Okay.
Second thing that comes to mind is if you have more than just a cell phone, to limit your cell phone use.
Okay.
To not sit a laptop directly on your lap.
Uh-oh.
These are some basic things that can be done to greatly reduce the amount of radiation that we're exposed to on a regular basis. To get outside more in sunlight and not so much under the artificial light that we have inside of our homes.
Okay.
There are also crystals, and I'm not very, very versed in crystals the same way that I'm versed into herbs. But a lot of people use quartz crystal to kind of help to balance that out and block those energies from being absorbed.
Okay.
Changing the type of light bulb that you have. Instead of getting your standard light bulbs or those fluorescent lights, utilizing a full spectrum light bulb. So those kind of things help because it brings more balance in terms of the light that we intake on a daily basis. So those are some things that are very helpful tips to help reduce the amount of radiation that we're exposed to regularly.
Okay. And Dr. Yuma, have you ever heard, I can't really rephrase it the way I heard it, but something about us, just, people of color have melanin in them, and is it something to the effect where it's like sort of like a defense to radiation where we don't absorb it as much, or have you heard of something like that before?
Saying that because we have melanin, we don't absorb radiation as much?
Yeah, or it doesn't. Well, it affects us, of course, but not as much as it would someone that was, that didn't have any melanin. And
I mean, I tend to hear that a lot when it comes to sunlight. When they talk about how, we have a natural resistance to that because of the melanin content of the skin, so we're able to tolerate more of it. Some people will flip that statement around and say, because of that, we don't absorb vitamin D as well. So I would suppose that same thing or same principle is probably what you're speaking of in terms of the radiation element also. It's just of that resistance. But even with the resistance, we still are able to, take that in, and it can still have a harmful effect. So it still doesn't mean that we should overdo a lot of radiative substances. And I know personally the effects that the radiation has through my clients and through my own personal experiences. So I don't know how accurate some of these things and statements are. You come across a lot of information and conflicting information at that. But one of the things that I always look at is my personal experience with it as well. And I know that some things are just theory, and some things actually have a practical element to it where it's tangible in terms of the results that you see from it. So I'm not saying that the theory doesn't have any basis to it, but at the same time, I'm going to lean towards what my personal experience is, and especially if it's beyond just me. And I see it on a lot of different people who I work with.
So do you think that sun gazing or doing sun meditations is healthy? Is a healthy practice too?
Yeah, from what I've come across, I think that is definitely a beneficial practice. However, it just has to be done the right way. If it's not done the right way, it can be damaging. So that's just things where, you want to make sure that it's not where the sun is at the peak of the day and at its highest intensity. But more so like during the dawning and the sunsetting kind of elements, where it's not so concentrated, where it can be damaging to the eyes.
Okay. So is it best to do it at when it's about to set, when the sun's about to set, or?
Yeah, sunrise, sunset.
Okay. Because I've read about people who can live off the sun, or I mean I've seen a yogi they had under scientific, pretty much like a surveillance. They had him in there for 8 days straight, and he didn't use the bathroom. He was just meditating the whole time. And he said, he lived off of the sunlight and was healthy. I thought that was amazing.
Well, at the end of the day, it's energy. You know, and some people are at a spiritually evolved level where they're so in tune, where they're able to transmute that energy into something that their body can utilize and sustain themselves for. You know what I mean? For a longer period of time, at the very least, than the average person.
Wow. So, I mean, that would be beneficial, like, say, for instance, some sort of disaster happened. You think we would, if there was some sort of natural disaster that happened, do you think that people will be prepared to put their bodies in that type of state?
No. not at the state of where we are now. You know, I think a lot of people would be straight out of luck. But it's a discipline that goes with that. And that's one of the things that many of us don't exercise. And the majority of us are not in tune with nature. Very little, if at all. You know, some people practically at all are just totally, like, out of tune. They don't sleep at the right points in time or times that are conducive with their body's natural cycle. They don't eat natural foods. They don't get outside and do things with nature or be in nature. They're inside under artificial light all day. They don't want fresh air. They don't, you know, it's just a whole, people who have allergies, you know, to a lot of different things as well, you know. So it's just like, if we're not part of nature and then something happens where we're forced to be part of nature, how many people are actually going to be able to make that adjustment in that quick of a time frame?
Not many.
Especially when it's not common knowledge on how to do that. I mean, there are books and many teachers who, you know, who contain that information, but they're not common, and especially not in this society.
Yeah. Maybe a lot of people.
I have a question. Speaking of, I'm going to cut you off, Mr. Feather.
Oh, no,
sorry,
you did.
Speaking of asthma, you brought that. I wonder, what do you think the cause of all of these children having asthma? Why is it so prevalent now versus when we were growing up, it was like rare?
Well, it's the same, similar factors. You know, we're looking at the food choices, because the food choices now are a lot different than when we were growing up, than when our parents were growing up, than when our grandparents were growing up. So there's a lot more contaminants in the food that will lead to a lot more mucus plaque buildup inside of the breathing passages. And that's one of the main contributing factors to asthma that often gets overlooked, is the mucus plaque buildup that develops inside of the breathing passages. Without that, there is no asthma. The second thing is the toxic environment inside of the body that leads to allergic responses. And then we also have to look at the air quality. You know, what kind of toxins are in the environment that people tend to be around. So what if somebody, you know, a lot more people may be smoking. We may look at the, the chemtrails and things like that tend to be over the cities now. We can look at the amount of cars and traffic and the exhaust fumes that come from that. We can look at the chemical sprays and perfumes and things like that, bleaches and chemical household cleaners that people tend to use. So when you combine all of these different factors, and then when you put the energetic spin on it or the emotional spin on it, that can direct that energy to that particular area, you know, then you end up with that condition.
Wow. Yeah, my son, he was born with breathing problems, and I'm thinking that it was either the prenatal vitamins, and something that I ate, during something that happened during utero.
Right.
And I'm like, it's probably prenatal vitamins because the chemicals. I don't know what they prescribe, those doctors. And then when he was an infant, I was doing that milk, that formula stuff, which I will never. And I think that exacerbated and made it worse.
Yeah, that stuff is horrible.
It is. Yeah. So I know now not to do it. If I want to have another child, but I'm just like, it's between the formula and the prenatal vitamins, because a lot of children young, have it, and it's just it's really a terrible thing. And what you said about the mucus and plaque buildup in the breathing passages, I think that's exactly what I'm thinking about, his symptoms or whatever, and that seems to be exactly what's going on that I've been observing over the years that he has that. But that's one thing I'm gonna order from you too.
Because that's important, and when we're looking at how herbs work with the body, one of the major effects that herbs have, just generally speaking, is the cleansing effect. The ability to move toxins from different organs or areas of the body where they're lodged. So we're looking at not only something that's going to work towards alleviating the symptoms, but also something that's working towards the actual issue of the waste accumulation inside of the body that interferes with the body's normal functioning. It's almost like if you have a pipe that has a bunch of gum stuck on the inside of the pipe, the water's not going to flow through that pipe the same way. But if you take the gum out of the pipe, then the water will return to flowing back to normal. So it's the same thing inside of the body. We have different vessels and passages where blood or air or, whatever else may flow through. And those channels need to be clear. If there are blockages in those channels, then the flow is not going to be the way it should be, and therefore the body won't receive the proper nutrients that it may need to receive. So in the case of something like an asthma attack, we're talking about oxygen, the nutrient of oxygen, which is one of the most important nutrients, arguably, if not arguably the most important nutrient that we receive. You talk about in the blood, many other minerals and vitamins and things of that nature are carried through the blood, as well as oxygen too, are carried through the blood. So if the blood circulation is not the way that it should be, then it's going to slow down the rate at which those nutrients are carried to different areas of the body. So that's one of the things where a lot of people who have even, say, thinning hair, even though it may sound a little off topic, but people who have thinning hair or balding hair where their hair is falling out is because typically the circulation is not getting to those areas at the rate that's well enough for the hair to grow at the rate that it's supposed to. So those nutrients are not reaching that particular area. So that's why you'll tend to have people who have circulatory issues, such as high blood pressure, diabetes, and things like that, have thinning or balding hair, be prone to that more so than somebody who doesn't have those conditions.
Wow. So now we know why.
Yeah. Well, can you we're down to the last few, 90 seconds of the show, so Dr. Yew, can you give your information out so people can contact you?
Sure. You can reach me by phone at area code 202-469-0264. Again, that's area code 202-469-0264. You can also reach me through email at dryew at ymail.com. It's DRYEW, like Dr. Yew, at ymail.com, and also on Facebook at facebook.com/DOCTAYEW. Facebook.com/DOCTAYEW. You can like that, my public page there. Send me messages as well through that page, and I post up a lot of good health information there, so definitely check it out if you are on Facebook. If not, and you want to contact me, my phone number, my email, either one is fine, and my website again is yew360.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Yew. We love having you on.
Me.
Yes, it was a beautiful experience. We learned so much tonight, and we can't wait to see you at the next event.
Yes, likewise. I will be at the Universal Love Movement event again, which is coming up on, May the 9th, I want to say. Yeah, Saturday, May the 9th at about 6:30 p.m. at the Edgewood Arts Building, so I'll be there again. Drumming and just supporting in whatever ways I can support Brother Manifest Rob. Big shout to him for holding that down, and the Universal Love Movement gathering is definitely needed around this time frame with all that's going on, not only in Baltimore but across the nation and globally. With all of the turmoil that's out here. So big shout to him for holding down that fort.
Shout out. What's up, Manifest Raw?
Yeah. And we're gonna post your herbal walk. When is that gonna be?
I need to I just had one, so I need to come up with the next
the
date.
27th. Oh no.
It was just this past Saturday, the 25th. It was kind of cool out for that. So the next one we'll have some better weather. But I should be looking at a date I'm looking at early June. I just have to confirm something with my schedule to make sure that it's not a conflict. But I'm looking at early June for the next one. Maybe the first weekend of June, tentatively.
All right. Sounds great. Well, we thank our listeners for tuning in, and Dr. Yew gave all his information, so you know how to reach him. And we just want to thank you all for listening. We thank Dr. Yew for stopping by in the Goddess Suite, and we send love to you, and we send love to our listeners. And we are signing off.
Love and light. Peace and blessings.
Yes, peace and
love
blessings.
And light. Peace and blessings. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye.